Hello and welcome to the United on Wheels podcast. How are you? It's me, Paul Amadeus Lane. So happy to have you on the show today. We are going to talk to two amazing individuals, so you don't want to miss that coming up here shortly. If you are a caregiver in a relationship with the person that you are caring for, and you want to find out how to do that successfully over many years, we have a couple that's going to share their insight. And I'm part of that community too. My wife is also my caregiver as well. So there are some things that we can share with you. Maybe you are new to this now, and maybe there are some things you're not quite sure of what to do, or maybe you may feel even overwhelmed, but we're going to talk about that. And if you're a caregiver in general, maybe there's some insight that we can share with you that can help you as well. Remember to go to unitedspinal.org to find out some great things that we have going on as an organization. And one of the cool things that we've launched earlier this year, and that is BAM, our Strong Will Together campaign. What you'll be able to do is submit a nomination for those who have spinal cord or other disorders, who are excelling in arts, sports, entrepreneurship, leadership. You can help them to be recognized in our Strong Willed Together campaign. You can go to our website and click on it, submit your nomination. Again, for individuals with spinal cord injuries or disorders, let me correct that, excelling in different areas out there, we definitely want you to nominate them and go to our website. Recently, we had an article on our website entitled Growing Stronger Together on the Frontlines of Caregiving. And we heard the story and the journey of two amazing people, Steve and Heidi. We wanted to spend a little more time with them, to talk to them more about their dynamic of being a married couple in which Steve is the caregiver. And we are so delighted to be able to welcome them on. So without any further delay, hey, Steve and Heidi, what's up? How you guys doing?
Hey, we're great.
We're great, and we're equally honored to be part of this with you.
Thank you. Thank you. We are so happy to have you, and thank you so much. And wanted to start off, how did you guys meet in the first place?
Well, we were in college. I was a senior, and Steve was a junior, and it was right at the beginning of that year, and we had mutual friends that introduced us. In fact, it was the girl, well, now woman, who was my caregiver all 4 years in college, and also a dear friend, and her boyfriend was lived in the same dorm that Steve did. And so the two of them kind of say, hey, these two might be good together. And they introduced us. And this one evening, to kind of make it easy, I guess the first time was all four of us went out for the evening just to have drinks and chill and talk. And it was a really nice experience.
Yeah. But it is just sort of interesting that it all goes back to caregiving and personal care attendance from sort of the foundation. And for what it's worth, we're entering our 34th year of marriage, or will be in June. And I think they've been a couple like 35 years, and they're married 30 plus years. So what are the odds of both of that? All a bunch of Northeast Ohio kids.
You know, I feel like a rookie, Steve and Heidi, because I've been married for 26 years this year in September, and been with my wife, it'll be 31 years this year. So I'm just a rookie when it comes to being with my caregiver, and now she's my wife. So I can learn a lot of things from you guys. So that is really cool.
You know, if you polled Heidi, she might only say that half of those 33 were good ones. I don't know. Sometimes I don't keep up my end of things.
You know what, Steve, we as husbands, I feel your pain, my friend. I definitely get that. And let's talk about, if you guys don't mind, some of your personal and professional background. You guys mind sharing that with us?
No, I guess I'll jump in first, but you can smack me because maybe male ego make me talk too long. But I'm trained as a journalist. I worked at like the big daily paper through college when Heidi met me. Kent State was our college for what it's worth, and worked for a large paper, not really covering disability issues because they weren't that interested in all candor, but worked for them a lot of time. We moved to Miami to kind of get out of the frozen cold and wheelchairs slipping on ice and all of that. In 2000, I ended up working as an urban policy advisor for a city commissioner, and the last 12, 15 years has been largely in marketing and storytelling on urban design, town planning, architecture, transport engineering. So that goes hand in glove because all of those very much, if you don't build the built environment for all, you're not building a good built environment. So.
That is so true. That is so true. And Heidi, let's talk about your professional background, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, I went to majored in English in undergrad, and knowing that it was just going to be a platform on to law school, went as Steve said, our undergrad institution was Kent State University, and then I went on to Ohio State University College of Law and graduated and passed the bar on the first try and practiced law for about 10 years. I never entered a courtroom. I was a transactional attorney for two different state government agencies, and a lot of what I did dealt with regulatory compliance. And in fact, the agencies I worked with also enforced Ohio Basic Building Code. So there was some of that already in that period of my life. We moved here in 2000, as Steve said, to Miami, and we both wanted to transition into something a little bit different. And I wanted to do something that was much more disability focused because I really hadn't gotten much into doing that. And so I wanted to do ADA compliance. And we moved here without jobs, the most crazy, risky thing we've ever done in our lives to kids who are normally risk averse, and struggled for a few months to look for work. And I was very fortunate. I was hired as the first full-time Americans with Disabilities Act coordinator for the city of Miami Beach, Florida. And that was my first real ADA focused job. My regulatory compliance practice, experience came in extremely handy. I was there 6 years, and then I was very fortunate that the Miami-Dade County government was needed to fill their senior ADA position, and I interviewed for it, and I got it. So I've been with Miami-Dade County government since 2007.
Wow.
And just one kind of postscript, because it's really worth sharing.
Absolutely.
We, way back when we started writing together, I kind of think the student has outdone the teacher. Heidi's she's always been an amazing writer, but kind of transitioning from English to journalism. But we wrote a lot of travel articles way back in Ohio. Then we transitioned to more of the planning policy. And then the real great culmination of that, which hopefully everyone that watches this can look it up or follow or advocate for it, is we probably lobbied about 10 years through two different deans at the University of Miami School of Architecture. And currently, we're just a little past the halfway point of the spring semester. We created a universal design class for architects and urban designers. And I don't know that either of us can draw that much of a stick man. It's really more policy and inclusion, but it's really a fabulous opportunity to get almost all graduate and fifth year architecture students. So they're going to be practicing very soon. And it's an eye opener for them. Again, I don't want to say any kind of negative, but it's the truth that most of their architectural studios from very learned and famous architects had sort of kicked the ADA to the curb. It was sort of like, oh, you'll just learn this, or it's an onerous process. I know we're speaking to the choir with this audience, but that's not the right way to build an inclusive environment, is to act like ADA is some pain in the rear, do this so you don't get sued, instead of build it because it's durable and inclusive, and that's what America's about.
And one thing that I noticed too, Steve, I'm glad you mentioned that, was that whenever something is designed for the wheelchair community, that once we're not wheelchair users, they appreciate that change too, like a little wider doors or curb cutouts, all these different things that we see that are being built, electronic doors, or when it comes to faucets and everything, they appreciate it too. So it's like everybody can use it if you do it. One size will fit all if you do it this way.
Look at how exponentially Amazon and just even getting things through FedEx, certainly COVID, most everybody was getting 2/3 of their, we're getting everything but whatever, fresh fish and tomatoes via the delivery. And yeah, think about the curb ramps, how good that is for the delivery people. I know they love our wheelchair ramp. I know, when we changed out the washer dryer, I think the guy was ready to buy us a cake instead of griping about hauling away the old one because they didn't break their back going up steps. And, I know Heidi always mentioned closed captioning, which is obviously more of a hearing than a mobility thing. But, you can't walk into a sports bar without the thing being on the closed caption because otherwise you have 98 different broadcasters competing with the sound. So, again, that's something that was created as a disability thing, but it's like, it's second nature.
That's so true. And Steve, over the years, how has your perspective on disability changed over the years, if you don't mind sharing that?
No, that's a phenomenal question. I think it's become a lot more personal and political. Again, I'll back up. When we want to go out, Heidi's brother's in town this coming weekend, we're picking a Florida seafood restaurant because it's a good old-fashioned Florida seafood restaurant, not just because it has like the most ADA-ish restroom or the widest ramp. But, I feel like a part of the disability community by marriage or by partnership. And, I'm not a negative person, but I must say when it passed in 1990, I really would have thought there would be more things. I wouldn't think there'd be so much pushback, like say a government agency is going to spend money on housing and the person's like, we shouldn't have to build any of this accessible. That's too much money. Or, the doors are hard to source, or all the developers will balk. And you're thinking, if government can't include everyone, what can? And, let's be honest, this nation has, some of our most embarrassing thing was exclusion of people with color. We had, it wasn't until 1964 that people even had basic civil rights. And I somehow feel like, 31 years into the ADA, we're still waiting for an extension of those civil rights. And people just look at you like, well, if you don't like it, sue me. And I don't understand that. I mean, 1 in 4 people will experience some sort of disability in their lifetime. That's a huge market share. It's good business. It's good policy to build inclusively. And again,
that's so true.
Replacing 3 little steps with a ramp, that's not going to make an Olympian balloon up to 300 pounds. It's not going to, those subtle changes are not going to, if you want to exercise, you can still go running or run up and down steps at the, at the high rise building or whatever. It's not, I get so many people nowadays with all this healthy design saying, if you make it for your wife, it's this nanny state and it's too comfortable. And I'm sorry, that's BS.
Yeah. I definitely hear you on that. And Heidi, how has your ADA advocacy and expertise has been enhanced with Steve by your side?
Wow. Golly. I mean, it's something I guess that we, of course, both talked about when we very first met. We met September 19th, 1985, and we were engaged by Christmas of that year. We were engaged though for 2.5 years and really got to know each other super well. From the get-go, Steve was totally cool. I mean, I had dated a few people and, one of the tests I would do would be if I went out in public with somebody in a wheelchair and to see how the person would react with people maybe looking at us. And Steve was just, was like nothing. He was totally cool with it all. But of course, still understood the need for certain adjustments and so forth in terms of my life. And so between the two of us, in terms of our marriage, it's just such a second nature kind of a thing. But in addition to that, we've, because it is so much a part of our DNA in a way, we are almost always thinking about these kinds of issues and seeing them in terms of not only the practical, but the social policy perspective as well. So it's almost second nature for us to, even if we're just going to go out and have a walk down the street that we're not as familiar with, we're almost always noting things, like, wow, gosh, that curb ramp's probably too steep, and gee, this could benefit if they just widen the sidewalk here a little bit. Or it's kind of always something that's in our minds and so forth.
And, we certainly didn't grow up rich, but I suppose we grew up fairly privileged. I mean, we both grew up in the suburbs, and, we were the mainstream. Most of the kids in school looked like us, and our parents were definitely fraidy cats that wouldn't challenge anything and sort of like the quote unquote whatever white Anglo-Saxon Protestant establishment. But yeah, we haven't chained ourselves to trees or jumped in front of a bulldozer, but we are, I think, all through our life, we have evolved towards social justice. And I'm not saying we need some sort of badge of reward, but yeah, you see the gap. We are terminally middle class, and we have to bite the bullet sometimes with paying for an accessible van or a modification on the house. And we look at how big of a check we write. We know there's a lot of people that can't even come close to paying for that. And that, it just breaks your heart. Maybe our parents' group would have gloated, like saying, hey, we're the good people. God put us on earth to be the ruling class or whatever. We can cut that check. But, I look at it the other way of, we're doing it by the grace of God, and we're going to be eating pork and beans for a month to make up for it. What if someone else is in that gap between they're not on SSI or they're not in public housing? How on earth do you throw the cost of repairing a van or modifying a room? And as we all know, you can join the disability community in a heartbeat. It's the only one that's across all races, ages, orientations. And I'm sorry, I'm probably going to yap too much here, as I want to do, but to sort of transition to a little of this theme with caregiving, I'm going to fess up on something. I probably still do it. I think I was terrible at doing it, I don't know, 10, 12 years in our marriage, maybe even longer. But I think sometimes I got this sort of self-righteous, I don't think I had to prove myself to Heidi, because she's incredibly loving and supportive and understands that we're teammates. But I think sometimes, we'd pull into something, and I don't know, there was a bicycle in the curb ramp or a motorcycle, and, I'm a pretty big dude as it is, and I used to be a huge dude, like 300 pounds, and, I wanted to, like, throw the motorcycle into a pond, or I just wanted to, I don't know, whatever, knock down the door of the restaurant and tell them, we called about this, why the hell is this blocked, or how come we're sitting at, I don't know, we're crawling on our knees at the bar because the main restaurant area is up 5 steps. And I just, there's times where you got to pick your battles, and there's times that, if it's your anniversary dinner, you probably care more about the steak and the chocolate souffle than you do about making a stand. So I don't know how common this is. And maybe this would be fodder for one of my stories for New Mobility or United Spinal, but I wonder how many relatively able-bodied spouses that are their partner's primary caregiver maybe launch some campaigns that are not requested. Maybe I'm crazy, or maybe there is some commonality syndrome with that.
Piggyback on what Steve was talking about, the kind of that frustration when you guys go out sometimes. How do you personally deal with that? Because I think wheelchair users like myself, we want to learn on how to act sometimes. So you might share that with us?
Sure. There's some days that, depending on the mood I'm in, I guess, I see things that are not compliant and things that are just kind of, thoughtless and could easily be adjusted to make, spaces and places more accessible. But, sometimes you're living your life and you don't really have the time or the inclination to get caught up in it. But then there's some days, for whatever reason, that you see something and it really sticks with you. And I find that I have to feel like I have to say something to somebody and, make a complaint or make an observation. It kind of just depends on that. I guess it's kind of like being a person with a disability is very obviously disabled. Obviously, wheelchair users are. Some days you'll have a stranger that'll ask you something even personal about your disability because they think you're there to teach the human race about disability. And sometimes I have no problem talking. And then sometimes I just have no tolerance for that, for somebody asking me a highly personal question that they don't know me and I don't know them. I think it's just a matter of, what are you doing that day where your mind is, and whether it's something that you feel like you want to focus on, and sometimes you just don't.
I think, Heidi, one good story to maybe tell briefly is about the the tire change lube oil place that you'd gone to like a half dozen times over the years, but then decided that your van wasn't going to work there.
Yeah, that's yeah. I have a lowered floor minivan with a ramp, and I'm able to drive it. And I had gotten a set of tires from a local garage, and I signed a service contract for a few years, so that if anything happened to them, they would fix them with no charge. And I went in to have the tires balanced and so forth. This one particular time, place I've been to many times, and the new manager said, "No, we can't provide service for your van because it's lowered floor." He had no really good reason why. He just kept saying that they could not, and then I needed to go to a different franchise of the same company, which is this. And they said, you have to go to a different branch that's got, for lowered floor vehicles. So it just really made me angry. And I think particularly the fact that I had signed this service contract, for these tires. So I thought, okay, we got to do something about this. And we did some research on the company. It is a large chain. And
like 1,000 national outlets. So this wasn't Zeb and Paul's one thing in the dirt pile.
Yeah. So we were able to find like a VP for the region that we wrote a letter to. But in addition to that, our county has a human rights ordinance that prohibits discrimination against people in protected classifications, including disability, and that applies to businesses. If a business is discriminatory based on that person's protected class. So I filed a complaint with them and was going through that process. And lo and behold, got a call out of the blue from the company and said, we're sorry, come back to the same place you had been to before, and we'll have no problem. And I did, and everything was great. So it took a little pressuring, had to put some pressure on them, because it also was just the right thing to do. I mean, some of it's the fact that, they're, in a sense, they're legally obligated, but on top of it, they're really morally obligated. And I just really bothered me, this thing of trying to chase me away, based on no reasonable logic there.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that, Heidi, because that means a lot for us who are part of the community, and just the frustrations that we have, and see how you and Steve both work together, and that's what makes you guys a great team. Not only being a caregiving and a couple together, but also giving advice on how to deal with certain things. And when it comes to like universal design, and this is something I wanted to focus on just for a moment, because it really shows why you guys are a great team. And working together, what is like your formula to make sure that both as a caregiver, both as a wheelchair user, that you both are getting the same point across for the betterment of the mission?
Wow.
That is a fabulous question.
Wow.
I guess I'll leap in and maybe I'll flounder and drown, but again, my background is as a journalist, and I did marketing and still do. So I think, not that you want to go from 0 to 60, but if someone is really recalcitrant, if you give them 6 bullet points and they just look at you like they'd rather you fall into a crevice in the earth than to uphold your rights. A lot of times, I guess I approach things with, I'm thinking like, hey, you don't want this to get into the newspaper, or hey, look what this would look like for you. Or again, one of the fabulous things in Miami, it's diverse. There's, I think our zip code is something like 80% foreign born, and something like 75% speak a language other than English primarily in their home. And a lot of times I try to look at that, we're all in this together. I mean, if I were hard-headed right wing, I would resent that we paid county dollars to do the ballots and the notices. Basically anything the county does is printed in English, Spanish, and Haitian Creole, and other languages on demand. And I think that's wonderful, because if you're an immigrant, and you need to learn where the library is or how to get the trash picked up, you deserve access to that. You shouldn't have to walk down the street or, whatever, subvert yourself to some other person that's bilingual. So while I support that, and I love the idea of that most of our commissioners and representatives are people of color and represent the percentage, if in the area is 70% Hispanic, then it should have 70% Hispanic representation as far as your judges and commissioners. So I think I sort of approach it from the optics thing, whether it's the hey, if you do the right thing, you could be a precedent setter, and you might, nobody gets on the cover of the New York Times for building a house. If you build in a phenomenally inclusive house, I'm not saying you're going to wind up there, but you may well have them have a look-see, or at least have a reporter call you. So that's my approach.
And how do you might share yours too?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess, I try to just handle these sorts of things case by case, and I also do believe that, as kind of echoing what Steve said, that if you're in a marginalized group, which people with disabilities certainly are, if a different marginalized group is able to make progress and so forth, it benefits all of us. It really does. And I fully support gay rights and consider myself an ally. But I have to tell you, if you had asked me 20 years ago, would I think that by this year that there would be legal gay marriage in all 50 states, I would have said, this America, I can't imagine that would happen. It was unfortunate that people were anti-gay and so forth in a lot of ways. But I thought, well, yeah, it'd be great, but I can't see this happening here. And yet they have made amazing progress. It's fantastic. Not that long ago, people with autism, on the autism spectrum, you didn't really hear a lot about that particular disability. And now we're real familiar with it in a lot of ways. And
Hollywood developed 6 or 7 shows with neurodiversity as part of the pivotal care.
Right. So I really feel like, even if I'm not in a particular group or subgroup, if people in other groups that, again, have been marginalized are able to make progress, it's good for every one of us.
And again, we don't want to come off as preachy or anything. We're normal, just aw shucks folks, whatever, trying to quit at a civilized hour and crack open a book or watch our shows. But I feel like there's such a missed opportunity, because if you added together anyone who is marginalized, whether it's pocketbook, race, sexual orientation, disability, whether it encompasses hearing, vision, mobility, neurodiversity, by any amount, you've got a majority. And I'm not seeing that strength. And I just, not everybody has to be an activist, but I just feel like, if I'm African American and that's my central issue, is ensuring my rights and ensuring that Obama's not the only president for another 300 years that was a black man in the White House, I also need to cross the line and care about disability, even if I'm a 30-year-old that competed in the Olympics when I was 20. And, it goes across the way. I think we signed some petition thing when idiot Florida was still denying gay couples from adoption. They give it to a incompetent mom that, burned a house down or something, but not to a couple. And, is that couple, when they go out and see someone building a brand new condo and it's horribly inaccessible, or they see someone stuck in the gutter where somebody did a horrible crosswalk, are they writing a letter? Are they, if their backyard neighbor's a commissioner, are they saying, hey, what are you guys doing about that? I don't mind a little of my tax money doing that. Again, they don't have to go out and create a foundation and spend 90 hours a week doing it. But I feel like if we cross-pollinated on advocacy, we could we could kind of beat back those that give the pushback on inclusion by any definition, not just disability inclusion.
One of the things we wanted to spend quite a bit of time on is caregiving and relationship, and just the dynamic that plays, especially for maybe newer ones who maybe just been diagnosed, newer ones that just been injured. And it's kind of a difficult situation. I remember when I got injured, my wife, who was my fiance then, our whole life changed, because we went from planning a wedding that year to me being in the hospital that almost that entire year and not getting married 3 years later. But then there's other stories where ones get that diagnosis or get that accident, and then their loved one just leaves them. So we want to really talk to that portion of the community and have you use your expertise and advice for couples.
Right.
Confronted with the disability and the new roles that they may have from the patient, and then Steve from the caregiving perspective too. If you guys can share some insight on that.
Yeah, I think that that it's a good idea for both parties to talk about their expectations. What are their expectations in the relationship and the caregiving dynamic and so forth. And it's not easy, and there's no manual that tells you exactly how to do it or what to do or whatever. But I think that one thing that I would recommend, and of course some of this is dependent upon someone's financial situation, but I really feel like since people with disabilities tend to have fewer options in so many aspects of life than people without disabilities, we need to find as many options as we can, even if it's just a plan B, C, D, E, F. I like to go beyond having a plan B. I like to have other possibilities. So that might mean that, the disabled spouse and the non-disabled spouse will have a caregiving relationship at times, but also seeking caregivers that are, paid caregivers, or potentially could be, I suppose, extended family that might be available to do some of that as well. But I really feel like, talk about it, see what both of you are comfortable with, what your expectations are, and then look at all your options. And even if things are going smoothly and your spouse is your primary caregiver, and that's really, you don't really need anyone else technically because they're around a lot, I still truly believe that you should be out there looking for good, reliable caregivers, whether it be through a good, reliable service or whether it's, private, just directly from one person to another.
And if I could dovetail on that, Heidi has been super brilliant. She's found, whatever, we're that typical middle class where we're not low enough income to qualify for any kind of program. So, most of those things like, oh, you're on Medicaid, you're on SSI, right? They pay direct. And it's like, no, we'll pay out of pocket. But I used to travel more when I was a reporter. And then when I worked as a policy advisor for a city commissioner in Miami, we used to have this horrible, annoying. When COVID hit, now I wasn't traveling at all. Heidi was working from home. Time was a little more flexible. And typical jackass, short-sighted person that I am, I think I was like, well, hey, let's put some $60 back in our pocket, or let's put 40, or, whatever a 2-hour visit is, etc. And Heidi's like, well, let's continue with them. And, hey, if they come midday, I can go run to the grocery store, maybe run an errand, buy lotto, gas the tank, take the lawnmower blade in for the guy that sharpens it and bring home groceries. Or in the evening, I can go walk. I've taken off a lot of weight in the last couple of years, and to maintain that, I can go for a good long hustle and walk and take a different route. Again, I'm probably going to sound like I'm a better guy by admitting the stupidity, and this is just the rawest truth, because when you tell your stories, I think people learn. And, I come from a family of extreme mental illness. My mom lived 80 some years on this earth and was pretty much whatever, not so crackers. I don't want to say a mean word, but she was severely blocked being a real person by her severe depression, OCD. She was like a handbook of things. And I think that created a person who is very short-tempered, very quick to frustration. 1 minute I'm a very collaborative person. The other minute it's sort of like, well, damn it, this, whatever, the delivery didn't come on time. This is a personal affront to me. And the upshot is, I have no idea if it's just because she's a fabulous person, or certainly I think disability teaches patience. But, if there's any reason we're married more than 3 months, 3 years, whatever, it's to Heidi, because she lives and reinforces the golden rule every day. We're not real big on old saws, but that's a pretty good one. I think maybe I'm a little bit better than I was years ago, but, she would explain it, you're going to get pissed at each other. You're probably going to raise a voice. You're probably going to have a fight. I don't mean like, Joe Louis punching, but, you're going to have a spat and you're going to have an ugly period. But, you're always on the same team. Don't burn a bridge. Don't chop off at the knee. And I'm not going to pretend that I've walked the earth all this time and almost a good chunk of my adult life with Heidi that I haven't gone to the point of stupidity or no return. But just, again, that's just me as a man, not just as a caregiver, but it's just, having a person in the room that explains teamwork and the we and even if she dropped the ball, so be it. Think of the 99% of the time when we're on the same page.
Yeah, I also think too, what can help is to really make your home as outfitted out as you can and as accessible as you can. Again, I understand that can be short. It may be difficult in terms of your financial situation. I totally get that. But if you can do things like that, obviously that allows more independence for the person with a disability. When Steve's out of town, if he goes out for a week or something at a conference, I have my paid caregivers that come in. But we also try to do as much as we can to set the house in a way that I can use it. Once that caregiver leaves, goes out that door, yes, I could call her back and have her drive back to my house. I don't want to do that. So I try to be as organized as I can. I always have a list of exactly what I need done before she arrives. I also, when Steve's out of town too, we put dishes out on the counters that I can reach. We put all kinds of things out to make it easier. And so I really recommend that you find ways to make your home as accessible as you can, and I'm not saying that it's going to allow you to be completely independent of any caregiving, but it certainly will help at times. The other thing too, I think, and this is something that we've encountered, I don't have an easy answer for this, but something to consider is, I think at times we've had different perspectives as to what the caregiver's role is. And my feeling is the caregiver is an extension of me. So the things that I would normally physically do and want to do, that's what the caregiver is to do. Now, that's personal care for me, but it's also, I want to pull my weight around this house. I want to have things clean and orderly and done properly. So that's another extension of me, and that's the assistance that I get. However, at times, Steve has seen the caregiver as his, I'm not going to say servant because that sounds kind of demeaning, and I don't mean it that way, but as somebody that's going to save him time so that he can have more time to himself, which is understandable. But it's a very different perspective in terms of how you see the caregiver's role. And that if you have that a big gap between the two of you, it's going to lead to arguments and difficulties. Yeah. So I think you need to, that's another discussion to have, is how do you see the caregiver's role and what is it that they're there to do? And I don't mean just, light housekeeping and personal care. I mean, what is the overall role of that person? So that's just another perspective that I would add to the conversation.
Heidi's dead on the money. Again, sort of guilty as charged, where I confess I'm very demanding and exacting of myself. I think maybe that's why I think both of us are pretty hard on ourselves as individuals. Maybe that's what drives us to be achievers. Maybe it's just what tortures us and we should knock it off before we die. But no, she's right, because my brain just says, here's a person that, we pay almost we pay a hell of a lot more than minimum wage because we want a good person that we can trust. And, Miami's kind of legendary for underpaying folks. And I just, it's like we help. Heidi's brilliant. So she plans ahead and she'll show me a list of, I don't know, a dozen to 24 things. And the minute I come back from my walk or grocery run or just doing something for myself, I'm almost looking on that list and it's like, oh, cat litter in one of the 3 boxes didn't get changed. Oops, the towels didn't look like they got changed. And let's face it, that's not, you wouldn't want a boss like that. If you did 90% on something and that the boss only mentioned the 10% that wasn't perfect, or maybe it wasn't collated, or maybe you started with B instead of A, or you were a little bit outside the box. Who on earth, unless you were starving to death and needed a crap job, who would put up with a boss that didn't see that you did 9 out of 10 things phenomenally and just picked on and scratched and picked the scabs off of that 10? Well, you're looking at the guy that's largely a nice guy, that's largely a good-humored dude, but when I'm in jackass mode, I think like, hey, that's a handyman / cleaning lady / whatever. And we kind of talked about this before, a little chat, just before we zeroed in on you on the software. Let's bring that up because, we're an open book, and, just pretending that everything was hunky-dory and the world just fell into our lap and it was all green lights would be pretty disingenuous. And, yeah, I think I've gotten a bit better on that lately. But, to me, if you are an able-bodied person, be it parent, spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend, roommate, uncle, look at the attendant as an extension of that person, just like the wheelchair is an extension of a person's body. And that's why, you don't want some dumbass, forgive the language, at a water cooler, thinking he's being cool and invading your space and putting his knee up on your leg rest, or pushing your chair and saying, "Hey, Sunday driver," and that kind of stupid stuff that every person in a wheelchair has heard 50 times within the first month of their injury, So,
I just want to say, Steve and Heidi, thank you so much for opening up, especially about this portion of our chat, because I think it's definitely a conversation that we definitely need to have. It can help out so many people out there. And thank you for your candor and your
I appreciate
opening
it.
up. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I another thing I would say too, just start quickly. I don't want to take up too much time, but it would be to the person with a disability, get as informed as you can about what programs you might qualify for, what social programs and so forth. Talk to, if you have a local center for independent living, contact those folks. If there's an ADA coordinator, should be an ADA coordinator for whatever city you live in, county you live in, talk to them. Start having conversations, and also with the disability community, because there may be, who knows, programs and things that might add, maybe you qualify for something to make your home a little more accessible, or, something like that. So I just think that, again, this whole thing about we don't have as many options as non-disabled people do. So we need to find out what our options truly are. And even if we think, oh, that particular program, I can't see myself using those resources now, keep it in mind. Don't disregard, and see what things are, what options that you have.
That's true. And Steve, you're part of the family here at United Spinal, and you write for different publications that we have, and those have been really some invaluable resources. And share about how you're able to pin thoughts that can help others in this community as well.
Proverbial civil servant that's a public works department. Don't call the bus person. If it's the bus thing, find out if your transit agency is done by the city or the county. When you call misinformed, we all want to vent. Certainly, I have a temper that sometimes vents. But when a person answers the phone and says, "Oh, you're all a bunch of fat jackasses that are overpaid and retire at 40," that doesn't exactly position the person to want to help you. We might be thinking that. We may need to write an email to ourselves or something, or write in our journal that that's how we feel because the city has dropped the ball on accessibility. But just again, it's just that educate. Do Google, just a quick Google search. You may find that one of the commissioners, even if they have like an autistic child, they might be more predisposed to all disability issues. Or if you see a commissioner 75 years old, they may not view themselves as disabled, but they probably maybe they've used the shopping cart as an artificial walker, or they've had some tiredness issues, or maybe the 30 seconds to cross the crosswalk is really, flirting with death with Miami drivers. So they're more in tune. But just, like I said, I'm not expecting somebody to read Robert's Rules of Order or read the city charter, but just, 20 minutes of homework plus, if a person calls and they feel like they know what they're doing. I was a person that aided constituents and helped write legislation. So if the person's kind of within the realm of knowledge, you think, yeah, hey, this is, and, be tenacious but polite. Just, say, and I'll be following up in 2 weeks on this, or, well, my whole community cares about this, and within a month or something, I need to tell them what the progress is. I don't think that's not saying like, I'm going to come in here, arms blazing, or I'm going to, write an op-ed piece saying your boss is a piece of crud, but it's, you give a little timeline, it kind of motivates folks.
That's true. That is so true. And in closing, any other themes that you both would like to articulate to the viewer or the listener out here in the United Spinal world, just about caregiving, being a couple, and anything else you'd like to share?
Sure. I think that that the caregiving relationship is going to be affected by the overall relationship. So I think that it's important to, if you're having difficulty or maybe you're having arguments and so forth, you can't seem to get the dynamic that both people are comfortable with, get some help, maybe some marital counseling or something like that, or even just individual counseling. I mean, my journey as a person with a disability started when I was 8 years old, and I had juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, what started it all. And I'm 57 and I'm still evolving in my disability image. Yeah,
pain.
Exactly. Yeah. So that affects, of course, the relationship. The more that a person can feel confident, can feel of value, can feel good about themselves, and not. I found too in my 50s, which is the best decade I've ever had in my life, is, I've seen this meme go around. It says, a woman who doesn't care or need the approval of anybody else can be the most amazing creature on earth. And it's so true. So work on yourself, work on feeling better about yourself, on your disability, the evolution of your disability, relationship to you and your body. And that will definitely affect and hopefully improve your marriage or your relationship with your partner.
And the one thing I would add, and I hope I'm not long-winded with this, but it's something I'm still reconciling. Maybe the openness of sharing with this is making me roll things through my brain. But one of the things that's probably not good for my ears, and you just hear it constantly, is, people know I'm a caregiver. I don't even want to say I sacrifice. I rearrange my schedule. But because society has not evolved, and sometimes I think we're still 200 years behind the current times as far as sometimes we're in the Bronze Age as far as how we treat disabilities. And, it's just when a boss is like, oh my God, I don't know if I could do what you do, or oh wow, you've never played tennis with your wife. Not that there aren't wheelchair tennis players, but with arthritics are not the greatest tennis players, or just, or there's so many vacations that you couldn't take with your wife, and my God, or just, I've even had people cuss me out, or, whatever, some boss that's PO'd at me, but he's at the end there. I guess their olive branch is like, but you're a saint for doing what you do. And, I think sometimes that can almost get in your head, it can uneven the playing field. And, you almost thinking like, well, my God, I did sacrifice, or my God, maybe Heidi owes me, or maybe if I'm a jackass, I'm thinking of another word that starts with a letter and ends with hole, but, it's like, if I'm bad and a character, maybe she should give me 5 mulligans because I helped her bathe and I helped grill the fish. And that's such BS. That's just, there's not a place for that. I'm not saying that you can't slide into that because we're human beings. But, again, if we had 2 hours, we would run out of time listing the things that Heidi brings to the table. And that's probably insulting to even bring it up because it's no shocker. But, we have a division of labor. Sometimes we discuss it. A lot of it's unwritten, whatever. She's real good at doing medical bills. And for that matter, I'm an idiot that can't even set the DVR. And she does that, and I squash bugs and drag out the 90-gallon trash container and the its companion blue recyclable guy. But it's just, again, I think when it's not like I'm an Olympic decathlete, but when you identify as able-bodied and you have, as Heidi said, when you're in a wheelchair, you can't exactly hide or pretend or mask your disability when you go on a job interview or to a dinner party that's up steps. So I think you can slide into this thing like, yeah, we're equal, but maybe they owe me, or maybe they should put up a little more of my crap. And, that's BS. It's BS. It's a partnership. There's just, I'm not saying it doesn't happen because we're human beings, but it's just, there's not room for that to be a caregiver. Caregiver is like 98th on my job list, if it even is a job. It's spouse, it's lover, it's sharer of good books, it's remembering silly movies that we saw when we were dating,
traveling through Spain. One of the things too,
running into the Prince of Spain that's now the king and talking about wheelchair issues in our baby Spanish.
We don't have human children. We could have done that. We chose not to. But we have feline children. And I have to say, if you care about animals, you love animals, and you have the money to afford to, care for them, I really recommend a pet. Our cats, this is going to sound a little silly, but in a lot of ways, they brought us really closer together. Compassion, and they're sources of entertainment and love, and something you both bond over. And we consider ourselves parents. We really do with our cats. Right. I know that sounds a little silly. I probably sound like a crazy cat lady, but I do think that if you love animals and you can afford to care for one, consider doing that. And I always say to adopt, don't shop. Yes, you can go to a breeder, but I really recommend go to your local shelter and adopt a cat or dog.
Obviously, there's the very direct function of a service animal or an emotional support animal, but and those are all great, and obviously the training programs, but we're just saying like a little fluffy street cat that maybe goes out at night and eventually adopts you and sleeps next to you on your pillow or something. But no, it's true. I mean, hey, the best of us can get a little stale or a little self-involved, or maybe just fall under the stress. My God, we all went through COVID. We all went through family members. We all went through the mask. We all went through crazy bosses that wanted you to come back to work too soon or what have you, and that's on top of all the other, can I make the bill? Are they going to take the medicine that Heidi desperately needs? Are they going to take it out of the formulary and say it's $1,000 out of pocket every other week or something? We all have those. So it's true that, even if I was being a bit of a butthead, and there's probably a much stronger word that should be used, but we'll keep this PG, maybe she sees my compassion towards the cat and is reminded, he was a little bit of a, a-hole or jackass at noon, but he's a good guy, or he's caring. And it's true. It was not in the plan. We just happened to have a Siamese cat that was abandoned and started sleeping under our wheelchair ramp. See, there's another bonus,
Yeah.
For all those realtors and architects that tell you can't sell your house because there's a wheelchair ramp and it's an eyesore, it's a shelter for animals.
Absolutely. And Heidi and Steve, it's a really, really a pleasure chatting with you both and finding more about your story and really shedding light on that caregiving relationship dynamic out there that no doubt so many of us are, find your insight and your thoughts so invaluable. And we wish you both well. And Steve, we hope you can check out some of your articles on new mobility and everything. And Heidi, keep doing what you're doing, advocating for us and everything. Really, really appreciate it.
You can follow me on Twitter at GimpGirl64. GimpGirl64.
All right, Steve, you got a Twitter too?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think I'm Steve Wright 64.
We were both born the same year, so.
All right.
Jail into the baby boom.
Well, thank you guys so much. We look forward to catching up with you guys again.
Super.
We would love to chat again.
Yeah,
again,
sure.
we're an open book at this point. If someone thinks less of me for being honest, that's their issue, not mine.
Excellent. Thank you for your time too.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed my chat with Steve and Heidi. Just some amazing people with some amazing stories and just some really, really cool advice to give to our community, especially caregivers out there as well. So we hope you enjoyed it. Before we let you go, remember, be a part of our Strong Will Together campaign. And don't forget, you can nominate someone for the awards that we have ready to give out to some amazing individuals out there. Remember, go to unitedspinal.org and nominate someone today. We're looking for individuals with spinal cord injuries or disorders excelling in arts, sports, entrepreneurship, youth leadership. We need your help to nominate them. Until next time, folks, please stay well, stay safe, and remember, I love you guys to life. Take care, folks.